Greetings and welcome to Writers on Writing. I am your host, Dr. Brenda Greene. Writers for Writing comes to you each Sunday and gives you, our listening audience, an opportunity to hear writers from the African diaspora talk about their work, their craft, and their lives. And this radio show is paid for by Medgar Evers College. You can also see Writers on Writing if you go to our YouTube page at the Center for Black Literature, www.centerforblackLiterature.org. I am so pleased to be able to talk to a pioneer in African American literature and supporting writers and looking at publishing and in just providing a platform where literary professionals can have access to many resources. And I am pleased to welcome Troy D. Johnson, who is the founder of the African American Literature Book Club. Welcome, Troy.
Well, thank you very much, Brenda. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's good. We've had a long journey, haven't we?
We have it. I mean, to what some of the earlier Black Writers Conferences,
That's
National Black
right.
Writers Conferences. Yeah, in the
That's
early
right.
'90s. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So just to give a little background about Troy, he is the founder and president of the African American Literature Book Club, as I said, and he's provided a platform for Black writers, authors, and literary professionals to showcase their work. He also has a goal of ensuring that future generations have access to this work. He's also worked to address barriers that Black writers face in the publishing industry. And he's also been a resource in terms of organizing events for Black writers, doing presentations at literary workshops, doing publishing workshops. Um, just his passion and advocacy are just admirable. And what's very interesting is Troy came from the business world, the corporate world, but he was drawn to African American literature. So I'm going to ask you, Troy, to share a bit of your story, how you got into this, and to tell us what tell us a little bit more about the African American Book Club, the history of it, and where you are now.
wow. Yeah. So the African American Literature Book Club started as an experiment. I was in a business school, and I wanted to learn about e-commerce. And at the time, I was building websites for other people, other businesses. And one of my clients said she really liked the site, but she wasn't making any money. So I said, let me try to figure out this e-commerce thing. And I decided to sell books. Um, for no particular reason. It was just a commodity. I looked at it as a commodity product. People didn't necessarily have to handle them. You know an author, you was familiar with their book and you wanted to purchase it. So I set that up.
So I'm sorry. So just a minute. You
Yeah.
decided to sell books, but you weren't a major avid reader.
No, I really wasn't. I
Okay.
really wasn't. And I mean, I read like a lot of guys read. I read to learn something. Um, but by the time when I started the website, I really wasn't even reading for fun so much anymore. Um, but again, so I created the website. This was a, you know what, it really might exactly be. I sat down to do this website in October of 1997. It might have been this very day. So it may very well have been 27 years ago to the date.
Wow.
I just don't remember the exact date, but I sat down to build this website, and I set up took advantage of the affiliate program that Barnes and Noble had, and I just started, putting. I decided to do Black books, and I put that out there, and the reaction was immediate. People reached out to me. I was like, "Oh, I discovered this book on your site. You should add this one," and people, there was a guy who volunteered to run our online book club, and he ran that for over a decade and picked out. We have a reading list that goes back to 1998, and one of the first books he picked was Jean Toomer's Cane, and I
Mhm.
never heard of the book, and I was largely unfamiliar with the Harlem Renaissance, and it was books like that that really just opened up a world to me. I just had never read anything like that before. Just the way the prose was written
Mhm.
and the imagery, it just was amazing. I hadn't read anything like that until John Keene's what's Janet Annotations, I think his book was, and it was very similar to Toomer's book. But at any rate, I just discovered a world of literature I'm just completely unfamiliar with. And I became quite passionate about it, and I wanted to share it with others, and I've been doing that ever since. I stopped building websites for other people. I went all in with this website, and I remember one of the first things I found online was the National Black Writers Conference, and I thought it was coming up, and I think I wasn't the only one who thought that, and it was an announcement for the event in '86, and that information was on the web, and so I didn't go to so I went to the very next one, and I met a boatload of people who people I've been friends with for now 2 decades, and just the just meeting really creative people, and learning about everything. I learned about John Henry Clark, and there are just so many uh, people and stories I just never heard of. And I grew up in Harlem, and and it's probably a testament to the public school system, but there was just so much I didn't know. And again, I was just really super excited to share that
Right.
with others, and that's what's been motivating me ever since.
Thank you. You underscore how, although this is called a National Black Writers Conference, it has been a place that draws everyone. You do not have to be a scholar, you don't have to be a student, you don't have to be a writer. I once spoke to someone who said, "Oh, I shouldn't go to the conference." This was an educator. She didn't understand that this is
Oh,
not a conference in that way where people are reading scholarly papers. It's a gathering of people where you have conversations, and as you said, you interact with other writers. And I always like to share that I think it was Sonia Sanchez who said writers check their egos at the door.
mm,
So
yeah,
when I'm writing the proposals, I always talk about the importance of bringing this gathering together, and not necessarily a festival, because a festival is where you have everyone, but we look at the trends in Black literature and get people to talk in substantive ways about the issues that people are writing about and
right,
passionate about. So
right.
just
And you
tell us, go on.
now, I was gonna say you also discussed the business of books as well, and
Yes,
so those barriers and how you can overcome those. So that yeah, the conference is super important.
right. So give us a little bit more information about the African American Book Club now, what you're doing, how many books do you have do you know how many books you have on your website? How many books do you have? What kinds of resources do you offer writers and publishers and the general public?
Yeah, just a wide variety of things. We review books on a regular basis. There are over 20,000 books, going back to Phyllis Wheatley, to books that will be published in another 6 months from now. So it's a curated list. I don't have every single book that's been published by a Black person, but I want to say or believe that I have the majority of the important books. So if there's an important writer, I truly hope they're on the site somewhere, as well as all of their books. So I sell books, and even if the book isn't in print, I try to capture the books on the site because I think it's important for people to have that history. I publish books even. I've just started. There's my most recent book is the book called the Savion Sequence, which is a book that talks about African metaphysics, and it's a murder mystery, and so a lot going on there. And it's compared to Dan Brown's book, but as one reviewer said, the author Amari Jackson goes where Dan Brown doesn't go. A more recent project was this Justice for Garvey. This book actually isn't out yet. It comes out in November, but it's a collection of essays and other writings which I contributed to that talks about the impact of Marcus Garvey. And again, you know, working with this author, working with Marcus, in fact, Julius Garvey was as part of the project, and he edited this volume. The it's another book, and I'll stop at this one. But I worked with this is a republication of the New Negro, and so I wrote a new introduction to this book, and just really well done. So I sell this book on the site. This volume is only 19.99 on the
Just
site.
just share with our listening audience what the essays in the New Negro.
Oh, so again, growing up in Harlem, this is something I discovered after I started the website. So the New Negro is a volume of books, a volume of stories, poetry. There's actually artwork in here, essays that s- are written by principals from the Harlem Renaissance. So you'll have Hurston and W.E.B. Du Bois and Langston Hughes, and Jane Toomer actually has a article in the some of his prose in the book. So it's really a snapshot of some of the uh, most prominent authors of that day. But the book is probably very close to 100 years old right now.
Is it?
But
Yeah.
it's an excellent sampling of the literature that what people were writing about, and it gives you a good sense of the culture, our history. And the publisher that this book is in the public domain, so you'll find a lot of treatments of it online. But I think this one, bang for buck is the best treatment that's out there today. The But yeah, it's a perfect sampling. So I would recommend people pick that book up. You can find it in your
Right.
library, or you can buy
That's
it
a good
on.
place to get started in understanding the Harlem Renaissance. Now,
Sure.
you actually are doing and engage in many of the activities that independent publishers and booksellers engage in, and for the most part, they are struggling. So, how do you sustain yourself as an online publication
It's
where you're
hard.
doing all of these things?
It's
And how can people help you? So,
Well, people can help. Well, perhaps it's probably worth explaining why it's hard. So the web, when I first started the site, it was, and the web, for all practical purposes, is still wide open in the sense that it's like the wild, wild west. You know,
yes,
whoever's got the most money, most power, willing to, be the most violent will win. There are no guardrails, there's no police on the web. But when I first started the site, it was so much easier to find an audience, and which was a good thing because that was the nature of the web. It was a platform that democratized access, not
yes,
just access to things, but the ability to reach out to other people. And that power has been completely usurped by literally a handful of companies. And that handful of companies control the web, and they control the web with their algorithm. And that algorithm isn't designed to serve us the way many of the websites, like mine, for example, really designed to serve people. And the algorithm however, sucked the air out the room, and it feeds you, and it feeds you because it's motivated by profit. So it's feeding you things that's going to keep you engaged. And so that through social media, through the way the search engine Google search engine works this way. It's dominated by ads. It, you know, it and in the organic search results, they're dominated by Amazon. So it's really difficult for a website to start out now, particularly in the world of books, and find an audience. I only have a chance because I've been around for a long time. But I will tell you that the World Wide Web is less rich today than it was when I first started. There were sites that I aspired to be like. And you don't it's
you're talking about quality and
yeah,
standard
quality, even a
and
quantity.
integrity.
Oh, yeah. So you have yeah, it's just really tough. And if you want quality content, you have to pay for it, right? If I want someone to review a book, I have to pay the reviewer, then I have to pay the editor, and then I have to, publish the thing. But social media is flipped it in such a way that people give social media free content. So they have free content, um, a lot of it bot generated, a lot of it not factually accurate, um, but optimized to keep people engaged. And so it's a lot harder now. And, it's a lot harder to attract traffic than I won't say ever been, but it's tough now. So and I lament I'm disappointed because it really has crowded out new entrants. So, there could be a great website on a very niche, just on the Harlem Renaissance, for example, but it would be largely undiscoverable because
Right,
if someone goes and does a search on the Harlem Renaissance, they won't get my detailed necessarily. I haven't ran a search, but they'll get Amazon, Amazon, Amazon,
right, right.
and,
Well,
and
it's similar. The analogy can be made is what we experience even in promoting the National Black Writers Conference. Because when we began promoting it years ago, that was the conference where Black writers could come and be recognized and they were respected and valued. But now you have many other organizations and conferences where they can go to. And then what ends up happening, there becomes this competition. Well, I can come to the National Black Writers Conference, but I'm not going to
yeah,
get paid what I will if I go to this university conference or this other conference. So we're dealing with that too. So I think it goes back to why are you doing what you're doing? I think part of how we attract people is because we're doing this because we really believe in the importance of providing that support to people who normally would not receive it. And there's some things you do for money, but there's some things you have to do because it's worthwhile. What is your value?
right,
What is your value system? How important is it to you to make sure that your books, your literature is exposed to a wider range of people and it's not about the money. And I
right.
think it's supporting Black bookstores, supporting independent publishers. What is your commitment to that?
Yeah, yeah. I remember being on one of the panels, and I displayed a list of Black-owned bookstores, and then Black-owned bookstores that had been open, I guess, going back over the last 50 years. And then I showed a list, and that list, spanned the width of the dais. And then I showed a list of the Black-owned bookstores that were open at
Yes.
the time, and it was just at the time I had counted 54. Um, and there are more now, but I've always felt it was super important to spread the information about Black-owned bookstores because they're crucial. They're critical to a community, and people couldn't understand why would I do that. Sure, you sell books. Why would you promote your competition? But it's not my competition. I think a website and a physical bookstore can be complementary. If I have a chance to go to a physical bookstore, I would. But most of us, including, don't live near a good Black bookstore. Most of us don't. And so the ones that do is, I encourage them to support those stores because they're critical. I mean, we used to have a few in Harlem, my old neighborhood. And by the time I left, I live in Florida now. By the time I left Harlem, there weren't any in Harlem, which is astonishing if you consider the fact that Harlem is arguably the Black Mecca. There's just no. I mean, I understand why that's the case, but it's tough. So we have to
Well,
support
yeah,
our
right.
bookstores.
Harlem has been the Black Mecca.
Yeah,
It
it has been.
has
Is it?
been.
Was it Brooklyn
There's
now?
some changes. There's some changes. Just moving on to another topic. What would you tell us a little bit about? You have a publishing project. Want to make
Oh
sure we get
yeah,
that in. What you're doing around supporting
yeah, yeah. So there's
publishing.
um there's
Mhm.
a number of professionals that I'm working with. Some folks in Big Five Publishing, some folks, you know, eh, some really senior people in publishing who've decided to come together and volunteer to work on this project, which we're calling the Black Book Accelerator. And the goal is to sell more Black books. And we're looking at different ways of doing that. Some of it is mundane, as working with metadata, helping people understand what BISAC codes are. And so there's a project that we're working on with that. There's another project and one that generates a lot of excitement, and it's a black book bestsellers list. And so we're working with you know, Sakana, and they are supplying me with information about book sales, and I've compiled that into a list, a monthly list of the best-selling books written by Black people. So there's never existed anything like this in the sense that this list looks at actual sales. There's no hocus pocus, no magic, no biases. We're just looking at the sales data and organizing it by different genres. So we have right now we have 8 different categories: fiction, nonfiction, both paperback and hard, poetry, which is often overlooked,
Yes.
um,
People don't
children's
buy
book.
poetry for some reason. They don't
y-
buy
y-
it as often.
they don't, but I think it's also an issue of communicating it. So in the early days of my website, poetry sold like crazy. Like anything that more Black press published, flew off the shelves. Like Saul Williams and Jessica Care Moore, and I sold a ton of Saul Williams, and there's no reason why he wouldn't be shouldn't be popular on the site as he was back then. But I'm gonna go back quickly to a question you asked: what can people do to help? You People need to visit sites like AOBC.com. They need to go into stores like Sisters Uptown and Washington Heights or Morningside Heights. They you People, if it wasn't for individuals, people like you, Brenda, who has supported what I've done, I guess as long as you've been aware of what I've been doing.
Yes.
And if it wasn't for that, it just I would not be around. So, and that's how we're going to beat the algorithm. That's how we're going to beat AI, which I can't even. We could have a whole nother hour-long conversation on that, but it's really people that are important. And if we don't recognize that and exploit our power, we're not going to fare very well. So yeah, no, you and the others at the center have been super supportive, and as I have of you all. You can always find the Killings review on the
That's
website.
right. That's right.
That will be. I got a bunch of orders in the other day, so it'll probably be another best-selling book the next time I publish my list. But yeah, it's really about the people,
Yes.
and the tech. I'll tell you one thing with the tech. I generated a conversation. I just basically fed Google Notebook, figure what the tool is, but I fed it the manuscript, and it spit out a conversation. And
This is
it's a
AI. This is the AI.
yeah, and I conversation between a man and a woman, at least at the way their voices sounded, and the author thought it was the best conversation he ever heard about his book. It just was remarkable what this software could do. It talked intelligently about a book, so it consumed the book in about a minute, and it took a few minutes to spit out the
Are you
conversation.
saying that this is what we should be doing in reviewing books? Are you saying how that this is how we use AI? What is your what's
Oh,
the
the reason
message here?
the message is that it'll become super it be exceedingly important for people to remain engaged. We already know most of what's on Twitter is bot generated. We know that, but it's not disclosed. So in a currently, you're reading stuff that was AI generated. No humans involved. Again, if I'll send you a link to that conversation and you can check it out. But unless you knew, you wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. So what's going to, and so it is not, it'll be the generation of, you're going to have there are already novels being written by AI. There, the AI will be infused in what we consume online in such a way that, again, if history is any indication of what will happen in the future, it won't serve us. So it's even more important than ever for people to remain involved in what we're doing. because
So what does
I,
that portend for books, the selling of books
well, the
and the
selling of
publishing of books?
well,
As
we
they
already
and believe it or not, we're almost at the end here,
yeah,
so
it's probably what, but I don't know, but what I do know that unless we stay engaged and understand what's happening and keep up with the tech, we're going to be left out of however, the impact will be left out in much the same way that we're largely left out of the web. It didn't start out that way, but the bias on the web is stronger than it's ever been. So if we're going to have a presence on the web, if we're going to have people come to conferences, we people have to share, spread the word and tell others and help others understand why it's important for us to meet in person, for us to visit websites, for us to write our own content. It's just yeah, it's important for humans to actually do a lot of this
right.
stuff.
We have to control the
Yeah,
narrative of our books, and it's up to us, as they said, we are the ones we've been waiting for.
yeah, we have to super aggressive at doing that because it'll become very difficult. So
Okay, so share with our listening audience and our viewing audience your website information, what they can get on the website when they go.
okay, the website again, African American Literature Book Club. It's at aalbc.com. Again, it's a source of, some of the most popular pages include our upcoming list of books. So there's usually about 100 books that haven't been published yet that you can discover by going to that link. Recently published books. Certainly our events page where you can learn about events happening actually all over the world, but focus primarily on Black events in the US, book events and festivals. There's a active discussion forum where you can talk about books or anything else you'd like to discuss. There's some of the other popular parts of the site include the, the bookstore listing. So I forget what we're up to now, but there's a list of, I guess, around 100 bookstores. Maybe it's 150. I should know that number. But you can discover the best bookstore nearest you. There's a map, links and everything. But there's thousands of authors, probably over 7,000 individual authors whose books you can discover and buy and read reviews of. It's really a wealth of information. It's a unique site in that regard. You'll find many other online bookstores, but the depth of content is probably is unique.
That's
So,
nice.
videos of events and I cover events. I've been all over the country, interviewing bookstore owners and authors and taking pictures, and it's just a wealth of information. It's like a librarian once said, it's a librarian's paradise.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for staying in the game. Thank you for all that you do and continue to do. And I can hear in your passion. And I just want to reiterate, support the African American Literature Book Club. If we don't do it, no one will. And you've been listening to my conversation with Troy Johnson, the founder and president of the African American Literature Book Club. Please write us at info at centerforblackLiterature.org. And please visit our website at www.centerforblackLiterature.org. Sign up for our email page and come back to visit Writers on Writing. This has been your host, Dr. Brenda Greene. Thank you again, Troy Johnson.